Hey everybody, Dean Meadows with the Daily Apologist podcast. Hope you're having a great day. Today I want to talk to you about something that a lot of people ask me about, whether it's at conferences or lectureships, or even while I've been the campus minister here at Virginia Tech. People ask me all the time, how do I start doing apologetics, and what advice would you give about doing apologetics? And so today I'm going to provide you some answers that I think will help you out and help you get started in apologetics. Number one, whether you know it or not, you are already doing apologetics. Apologetics simply means to give a defense for a particular position and or worldview. So for instance, like when you watch ESPN, First Take, Get Up, or Skip and Shannon over on Fox, you'll notice that you have two people on each side of a question, and they defend their position. They're giving an apologetic for that particular player, team, or issue that they are discussing. And the same thing's true with you. When people ask us why we believe what we believe, and we give them an answer and we give them a reason, well, that's Apologetics 101 right there. Why do you believe what you believe? If you quote scripture to somebody, or you present a philosophical argument, or even if you share with somebody an experience that you had, that is a form of apologetics. So the question really isn't, how do I start doing apologetics? You're already doing it if you're telling people why you became a Christian. So maybe the question we need to ask is, how do I get better at doing apologetics? And so one of the things that I would say, point number two, would be start with easy to read and understandable content. If you're somebody that's looking to just dive into apologetics because you realize the value it has for evangelism, but you haven't really studied it for a long period of time, I would say let's just go ahead and ease into apologetics. We certainly don't want to jump into the deep waters of apologetics because we might get discouraged. It's like the person who's never had a swimming class and they say, hey, I want to go up on the high dive and I would jump into the deep end. Well, they are going to struggle to swim and stay afloat. And I certainly don't want that for you. I think everybody should be well-versed in apologetics. So start with some easy to read and understandable content. For instance, the content that we have at thedailyapologist.com, there's a lot of things on there that are really simple and easy to understand. Some resources that I would that jump out at me just here and now would be Lee Strobel's A Case for Faith, A Case for Christ series. When I first got into apologetics, those are the first books that I read because I love the story that he tells, and Strobel's writing is very understandable, not just as it's easy to read, but the concepts are easy to grasp. And then I would say the second thing that I would read would be Evidence That Demands a Verdict, the updated edition by Josh and Sean McDowell. Once again, very easy to read, and the concepts are understandable. And as we do that, as we read these books, and as we understand concepts, those things start to help us understand the topics that we are looking at, and it's easier to acquire the knowledge that way when things are easy to read and easy to understand. So those are probably the two things that I would start off with first. And so then what I would also do is, as you're reading, anytime you're reading, whether it's the advanced stuff, once you work your way that way, or this the introductory level apologetic stuff, I would take notes in my reading time, during my reading, either in the book or on a notepad or in a notebook or even in a Word document, and save it as a folder so that I can revisit that. One of the most frustrating things that I found early on in doing apologetics is I would read these books and they would just be good books, understandable, but I didn't gain the retention that I really wanted to gain by reading them. So I had either one of two options. I could read them over and over and over and over again and retain them through that, or I could just say, hey, let's go ahead and dissect chapter 1. Let's put it in a Word document and save it into a file. And we'll categorize this as each individual argument that's presented in chapter 1. Or what I've been doing recently is as I'm reading a book, whether that's in philosophy or whether that's in apologetics, I'm actually making PowerPoint presentations out of the notes that I'm taking that really highlight each main thrust of the chapter. That way, it serves two purposes. I can go back and look at it with just turning on a computer and clicking through the PowerPoint, but also I have now presentations that I can give based upon my reading. And so it helps me retain that information more when I read it, and then I put it into a PowerPoint, and then, hey, now I've got a class. So that's another thing that I would do that would help with retaining and entering into apologetics work. Also, here's something that is very basic but is super hard for a lot of people to do, is have conversations. Some of the things that have just helped me refine myself as an apologist is simply talking to people who view a specific subject from a different point of view than I do. Whether that's on the existence of God, whether that's the reliability of Scripture, whether that's the resurrection, whether it's social issues as well, things like abortion or LGBTQ plus issues. I have found that some of the best growth that I've had as an apologist comes from having those conversations with people on the other end, because this is what it does for you. It allows you to entertain not just a different point of view, but objections to your point of view, so that you can go back and you can study and mine those objections to see if you really are in a position of understanding and knowing truth. So that definitely helps. So have those conversations with people. Just kind of as a side note to that, make sure that you're ready emotionally to have those conversations, and make sure you're ready spiritually. You're spiritually mature enough to have those conversations. The last thing that I want you to do is go into a conversation about some of these apologetics topics and then blow your lid on somebody, and then you just give yourself and the church a bad name. Please don't do that. So if you know that that's an area that you have to work on as far as having these emotional conversations about these specific topics related to apologetics, then let's just hold off on that. And maybe what you do is you have those conversations with a friend in church. Like, hey, if you were an atheist and I was a theist, and I asked you a question about A, B, C, or D, how would you respond to that? And just let them respond. And then you can go ahead and respond as a theist. So, hey, have those conversations, but if you're ready to have those conversations. Also, and this is so key, remember it's a marathon, not a sprint. I had a very good mentor of mine here recently, as he was asking me about my research that I'm doing. He reminded me, he said, Dean, you have a tendency to jump the gun. And that can be devastating as we enter into apologetics. That can be just devastating in general when it comes to life. And early on in my development as an apologist, I wanted to know everything about everything, and I wanted to know it now. And so I'm over here reading epistemology, metaphysics. I'm, looking at some apologetic stuff. I'm looking at the Kalam argument, fine-tuning, and before long, I'm so scattered that I get overwhelmed by just the vast number of subjects that pertain to apologetics, because I was like, man, I've been in apologetics now for 2 or 3 years, and I don't know everything. And I had to just kind of step back and say, you know what, I don't know everything, and that's okay. I've granted the good Lord gives me time on earth. I've got time. I can pace this out. And so remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Go ahead. If you're interested in reliability of the New Testament, just go ahead and do all you can and dive right into that subject, and mine that subject for all it's worth, no matter how long that takes you. If you're into philosophy of religion, well, go right into philosophy of religion and mine that subject for all it's worth. If you're in to resurrection studies, hey, go focus on the resurrection. Or maybe it's not just mining it till it's very end. Maybe it's just saying, hey, for these 6 months or these 3 months or these 4 months, I'm going to dedicate my studies in apologetics to fill in the blank, and pick something that you're passionate about that will help you develop a working knowledge of that subject, and then say, hey, all right, well, I've done a 3 months to this, or 6 months to this, or a year to this. I really have questions about whether or not God is responsible for the beginning of the universe, or if God's responsible for anything at all. Does he even exist? Let me go ahead and pick up some stuff about that and dedicate X number of months, or maybe even another year to that. So remember, it's a marathon. It is not a sprint. And when we view it as a sprint, we're going to get overwhelmed. And most people who quit apologetics, quit the subject of apologetics, the study of apologetics, because they get overwhelmed because they believe that it's a sprint, not a marathon. All right. Another one, hey, maybe one of the things that you want to do is a certificate class, right? Maybe you say, hey, I'm looking around here, and I don't necessarily know if I'm going to do a graduate program, but I know I want to do something. Well, there's a number of certificate classes that you can take, number of certificate programs that you can do. One of the certificate programs that's out there is by Harbinger Theological Seminary out of Nashville, Tennessee. It's out of the Nashville Church of Christ. Myself and Aaron Johnson from the Daily Apologist, we teach in that program, and it's absolutely positively free. And if you want more information about that, go ahead on Facebook, go to Harbinger Theological Seminary, type that in, and you can look at some of the posts that we have there, that they have there. And then also you can just go to harbingertheologicalseminary.com, and you can look at the certification courses there. And hey, sign up. They're free. You can't beat free. So go ahead and look at that. Also, if you're wanting to pay some money for a certification course that's really good, Houston Baptist University has a great course, and Biola University has a great course as well. So hey, maybe one of the ways that you can grow in your apologetics is to do a certification class or do a certification course. It can't hurt. So I would definitely encourage you to do that if you have the time, and if you have in some cases, the money. Finally, look for good online content. Whether we know it or not, we live in the golden age of apologetics, and we live in the golden age of connectivity. There are just a bunch of amazing YouTube channels that are out there that are strictly dedicated to apologetics. There are a bunch of blog sites and websites that you can go to. A couple that I would highly recommend, obviously, the Daily Apologist, cheap plug there. SeanMcDowell.org. Sean McDowell is a great apologist. J. Warner Wallace is a great apologist. I would also say Reasonable Faith. If you're more philosophically inclined, that's by William Lane Craig. And there's just so many. I could name them for forever, and you would get tired of our time together. So, so look for good online content. And so I think that if you follow these 7 principles for getting into and doing apologetics better, then you will find that apologetics is a rich study that not only helps you to prepare to evangelize your community, but also it really does draw you closer to God. It helps you understand God more and just see how He, in some instances, you're examining who He is, and in other instances, you're examining the intricacies by which He has entered human history so that we might be reconciled to Him. And so apologetics is a great study. Apologetics is a great tool. Apologetics helps you in your evangelism, and it definitely draws you closer to God. So those are 7 principles on how to enter into and do apologetics better. Thank you for your time today. My name is Dean Meadows. This is the Daily Apologist podcast. And remember, we are equipping Christians to engage culture every day. Have a great day. God bless.